Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, I am playing a ship that I never thought I would play. One that, surprisingly, quite a few of you guys have asked for my opinion on. And I've only been able to give my opinion from the receiving end of this ship. So I finally decided to sit down with this ship and play her. And that ship is the Tier 8 Premium Japanese aircraft carrier, the Kaga. The Kaga is one of the oldest CVs in the game. I think it might be the oldest premium CV in the game. She first went on sale in June of 2017. So this ship is approaching 7 years old in this game. 6 years old right now. It'll be 7 next year, which is insane. Now, my experiences with the Kaga, like I said, I've always been on the receiving end of it. And that is a big thing in this game. When we are on the receiving end of something, our perception is usually pretty biased. Because we always see it as, well, it's doing XYZ, and we're not seeing that the player playing is having to do, 1, 2, 3 in order to get XYZ to happen. And I've talked about this before with my perception about like Small Insk and Thunderer and Torpedo DDs and DDs in general and cruisers in general, especially light cruisers. So I finally decided to sit down and play the ship. So for my previous experiences, I've always seen the ship as this is the carrier that never runs out of planes. There's always like at least half full squadrons coming at me. It seems to be able to set me on fire just in innumerable amount of times in a game, and the planes never run out, and sometimes it throws rocket planes at me. Even though you might be shooting down 20 or 30 planes, by the end of the match it always seems that the Kaga just has more to throw at you. So when playing the Kaga today, it was an experience. First off, wargaming, for the love of God, please nerf the Colossus. In playing, just see the background footage. I ran into a Colossus 3 times in a row. And 2 of those 3 times, the Colossus player simply decided that, well, I shouldn't be playing the game, and sunk my Kaga in like 3 or 4 runs because the Colossus's rockets are that cracked. Now you might be thinking, well, 3 or 4 runs, it's kind of fast for a CV to sink another CV. Yes, it is. But by Colossus standards, that's actually quite the failure of the Colossus player. A Kaga is, fortunately, it's a converted battleship, so the hull is actually kind of tanky compared to other CVs. And Kaga is one of the CVs that the Colossus can't one-shot. There's quite a few CVs that the Colossus can see that it can remove from the match in 1 run. Again, Kaga, thankfully, isn't one of those. But good lord, still, like 3 or 4 runs, that's... The Colossus is cracked and definitely needs a good old bonking with the Nerf hammer. But anyway, so after I finally got away from the Colossus players that had it out for me, how was the ship and should you pick it up? Well, first off, the ship is actually one of the cheaper Tier 8 CVs. I think it's the cheapest one actually. It's only $45 in the Armory, which compare that to the other premium CVs. I'm sorry, not the Armory, in the premium shop. If you compare that to like the Graf Zeppelin, which is oddly enough considered to be the worst Tier 8 CV, it's $56, almost $60 US. But the other ones are $49, $48. The Kaga's $45. So it's the cheapest Tier 8 CV out there right now. And that's pretty surprising because, yeah, from what I've seen, it's definitely one of the best Tier 8 CVs, if not the best. I would definitely argue probably the best, although I haven't played the complete round of Tier 8 Premium CVs and Tier 8 Techline CVs to be sure. But the thing is, it's very new player friendly. So what does make the Kaga so good? Well, the planes, of course, it's a carrier. The planes are very, very new player friendly. So you have 3 flights to pick from. You have the attack aircraft, the rocket planes. I'm going to tell you off the bat, these aren't really worth using unless you're just out of planes completely. The bombers, which are HE dive bombers, and then the torpedo bombers. The bombers and the torpedo bombers are just good, consistent damage dealers. And what makes the Kaga so new player friendly is that these guys have large reserves and a decent regen rate. With the build that I'm running on my Kaga, my bombers have a 67-second regen rate. So just a little over every minute, you're getting a new plane. Add that on top of the very comfortable reserve size that the Kaga does have. It is pretty difficult to completely run out of bombers. The torpedo bombers are a little bit different with 86 seconds on their regen rate, but still having a nice, comfortable, large reserve size on the ship itself. So even though the torpedo bombers have an 86-second regen rate, that's under 2 minutes. That is quite comfortable when it comes to having new planes every so often. So if you are like me and you typically send a flight of planes back to the ship, because the whole thing is that in most cases you're really only going to get one run off with your planes. So instead of bringing 3 flights out there, you send one back, and then with the second squadron that you have, they kind of act like a buffer between the flak and the planes of the attacking squadron. You might lose 1 or 2 of them, but you get your full attacking squadron off, and you'll send your attacking squadron and then that squadron back, minus maybe a plane or 2, or maybe half of that second squadron, depending upon how much flak you eat. So it's a very easy, consistent method to reserve planes. Add that on top of the nice regen rate of the Kaga's planes and the large hangar size, and you pretty much won't run out of planes in the Kaga unless you're going up against tier 10 ships stacked on top of each other. So, the bombers themselves, starting with the dive bombers. So, these bombers have HE bombs, which are good for doing excellent, consistent damage. So the bombs that it drops, they have 4 planes in a squadron. In an attacking flight, 1 bomb per plane, and they have a maximum damage of 8,800. The HE pins, 55 millimeters of armor, which is pretty darn good for a tier 8, and they have a 50% base fire chance. You go and throw the fire flags on top of that. That of course takes that up to 51%, which is hey, the more the merrier. And with my experience, it wasn't any tall order for these bombs to start at least 1 fire almost every run, if not 2, sometimes even 3, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But yeah, and the reticle is nice and small. It fits in the silhouette of most of the heavy cruisers, and even some of the larger light cruisers. Battleships are of course exceptionally easy to get these bombs off on. And again, with the fire chance and the pins and the nice alpha, you're going to be doing good, consistent damage there. Now, the torpedo bombers, they have, again, 4 planes in their attack run, 1 torp per plane, and they do have a pretty big run-up, so you do have to give the enemy ship a pretty good lead. They do travel at 52 knots, so you got to get used to them with that run-up and the speed. They're a little bit trickier to get on target with some of the more nimble ships, like some of the more nimble heavy cruisers, light cruisers of course as well. Battleships are a bit easier if they're not paying attention, but what I was doing with my Kaga by the end of it is that the first squadron, I would normally approach them from the front and force the ship to maneuver, hurry up, fly around, and then get to the side, and then hit them with the second squadron. That would normally be the squadrons with the torps that the target ship would eat, and then boom, you're doing good damage there. It's 5,400 maximum damage per torpedo, so with all the torps combined together, you're doing a little over 20,000 damage. Of course, once you factor in stuff like torpedo protection, you're typically doing, if you get all 4 on target, anywhere from like 15k to 16, 70k, depending upon the torpedo protection. Again, if you run to something like a Yami, of course, you're going to be doing much less than that, closer to like 12, 13k. But again, with the regularity that you can get these torpedoes on target, once you get used to it, it's just good, consistent damage. The rocket planes, they're not too much to talk about. They have a regen rate of 94 seconds, and they only have 2 planes in an attacking flight, 4 rockets per payload. They have 28 millimeters of HE pins and 8.5% chance of causing a fire. And I honestly didn't really use these unless I had to, like I was starting to run low on the other squadrons. I would take this one out just as a break. They don't have a lot of boost on them either. So, yeah. Now, the planes themselves, I have played a lot of German CVs, so I'm used to being able to kind of hold down W to get out of most of my problems. So like with the German CVs, for the most cases, you can either outrun fighters until they stop chasing you, or typically you can get to the target before the fighters catch up with your planes. But with the Kaga, that didn't work out because the planes aren't, of course, as fast as the Germans are. So I had to get used to dodging flak a lot more, not relying on speed as much, and that was a bit of a learning curve for me, but that was something that was easily done in a handful of matches. And keep in mind too, I'm not an amazing CV player by any stretch of the imagination. The Germans are the only ones that have really any extensive experience on, and I was able to pick up the Kaga and get used to it pretty quickly and start getting results like what you see in the background. Not necessarily this good, but easy, like 150, 160k games, 1 or 2 ships sunk at least, no problem in a couple of matches with the Kaga. It's a really new player-friendly CV. Definitely if you have grounded up to tier 8 CVs and you want to spice up your CV choice, the Kaga is one that I think you should most definitely look into getting. Again, the HE dive bombers, good consistent damage. Torpedo bombers, good consistent damage. Planes, plenty of them. They regen fast enough. The build that I was using, again, worked quite well. And it is, again, one of the cheaper tier 8 CVs, and there's a very good chance you probably have picked up one of these either from a container or something, because I got it in, I think, the anniversary event, and it's been sitting in my port for a little over a year or 2 at this point. Even got a Kaga B as well through the Black Friday event, and that one's been sitting in my port for even longer. I think it was Black Friday 2 years ago. I think it was the first year it actually was introduced in, is when I got it in a container, and it's just been sitting in my port since then. So a ship that I'm glad I finally picked up. And again, if you're wondering, how do I deal with these CVs, playing them is the best way to do that, and Kaga will give you a pretty good taste of what CV players are looking for. So guys, it's my 2 cents on the Kaga. Really solid CV, great CV, probably one of the best at tier 8, and definitely a very new player friendly CV. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. One way to 50,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure exactly when this one's coming out yet, but whatever day it is, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and wonderful rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.